So, first things first, chord tones. So, as I mentioned earlier, and if you've been watching any of the lessons that I've done recently, you'll know that chord tones are the notes of a chord. So if I play a chord, let's say a C major, and let me know if you can't hear the bass well enough. If I play a C major there, obviously that's a chord. And you would see that on a chord chart, sheet music as just a C, a C major chord. If it was a C minor, which is a little bit sad, you'd see C and a little M. So that's a chord. Now, the notes of that chord, they are the chord tones. Very simple. That's all it is. An arpeggio, that many of you will have heard of and probably learned a few, an arpeggio is just an ordered line of chord tones. So if I play those three chord tones in a line, that's an arpeggio. Okay, so however you play them, that's an arpeggio. So you've got an arpeggio and it's just a string of chord tones. Now, why are chord tones so important? Well, again, like I was saying earlier on, our role as bass players, our foundational role, our kind of fundamental role in a band situation or an orchestra or whatever, is to, play the lowest note of the chord usually, whether it's the root or another note, but we hold down that bottom end, but we are kind of in charge of what the chord is. So, if you're playing, everybody could be playing, let's say, an E minor chord, but if we play a C down on the bottom, it actually turns into a C major. So we have a lot of power down at the bottom because we're playing that lowest note, because you measure chords from the root up. Okay, so we've got a lot of power there. And our job as the bass player, yes, is to hold down that low end and, outline that root movement, but it's also to outline those chord changes, So, like I said, earlier I was just playing through a walking bass line there. Take a very simple one. You can hear the chord progression there, which was... Okay, D minor 7, G7, C major 7. Okay, you can hear that. Dum, 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 dum. You can hear the chord progression, and then you got the dum, 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 dum. Okay, there's a lot going on there. There's a lot of chromatic notes and stuff, but what I'm doing is outlining the chord progression. You can hear the chord progression in the line. You don't have to hear those chords. You can hear it implied in the bass line. Same for any bass line. It doesn't matter what the style, if it's a rock song, whatever. We're outlining those chords. So, many people ask, how do I create melodic bass lines? How do I move around? If you've heard anything by, guys like anything from John Entwistle, Geddy Lee, Paul McCartney, all of those guys, all the way through to modern day, you hear melodic bass lines. If you've got a chord progression of, let's say, C major, F major, G major, as a bass player, you could play C, F, G, the root notes, those notes, the letters that you see on the chord chart. But then you hear these other dudes playing all over the place. You think, well, how the hell am I supposed to do that? Well, the notes that are always going to work, if you want to outline that chord progression, it's the chord tones. The reason they work is because they're in the chord. So if I play C major, the chord of C major, those notes are in the chord tones. They're always going to work. They are consonant. In music, everything is consonant and dissonance. You've got it's a spectrum really, but you've got notes that, play well, as in, G and G. Those two notes work well, but if I play this, that's dissonance, okay? That's one note away. G sharp to G, and then G to G, okay? Consonance, dissonance. So when you've got a chord like C major, the notes that you play in the chord are the most consonant notes. Everything else around it has a degree of dissonance. So if I was to play that C major and then I was to play the D flat above it, it's going to be dissonant, okay? So the chord tones, they are the most consonant notes, and if I play those arpeggios there, you again, like with that, you know, the walking bass line I just played, you will hear the chord progression just in the bass line. It gives it, you know, that melodicism. So, for instance, if I'm playing C major, then, you know, F major and G major. I talked about this last week, actually, on last week's YouTube video. If I take the notes of the C major chord, that's that C major, there's the C major arpeggio, then F major, then G major, back to C, you can hear that chord progression. Here's the chord progression again. Now. You can hear that chord progression just in the bass line, okay? So that's how we outline chord progressions. Now, obviously, you don't have to just play the arpeggios up and down. Not every bass line in the world is just going to be playing arpeggios up and down. But you can take those individual chord tones and make use of them. It's just a palette, okay? So if we take the root note of each chord as being the most important one, it's the lowest note in the chord, that's the one that we really want to be hitting on beat 1, okay? So with C major to F major to G major, if I just show you which notes I'm hitting here. C, I'm taking 3rd fret on the A string, F, 3rd fret on the D string, and then G, 5th fret on the D string. Or you can take the F and the G down here, 1st and 3rd frets on the E string. So you've got C, F, G, or C, F, G, or you could even play F, G up here on the A string. That's the root notes. And you'll all know what I mean by that. We're just playing those root notes. If you're given a chord chart, you know, whatever kind of band, whether it's a rock band, you might be in some kind of worship band, something like that, a country band, guitarist, keyboard player, they give you a chord chart and say, right, okay, well, I want you to play along with this. The first thing you're going to do is hit those root notes, okay? C, F, and G. For this chord progression, C major, F major, G major. So, we've got the root notes. Now, we could also use the 5th. So, in a chord like that, C major, we've got C, E, and G. We've got the root note, the 3rd, and the 5th. I'll come back to this in a sec. I'm just giving you a basic introduction so that I can then get into the theory a little more in a minute. But if we take the root there, and then what is actually, in essence, the 5th, the perfect 5th, C to G, you probably all know that pattern already. Okay? That's 2 notes of the arpeggio. C and G. So we've got a little pattern there. I could play the G above, I could play the G below. So C, down to G, C, up to G. And then we just take that pattern and we can play it through that chord progression again. So we could have... Again, we're just using the chord tones. It's that root and 5th. Play the 5th below. That's about as simple a bass line as you can play. You know, it's not interesting at all, but point being, you can use roots and 5ths, okay? But then you can also use the 3rd, okay, which is the 2nd note in that chord. C to E, or F to A, G to B. So in each case, it's going to be a major 3rd. Again, I'll come to all this in a minute, but we've got this little pattern here of C to E. So 3rd fret A string, 2nd fret on the D string. That's a major 3rd, okay? And that has got all of the quality of the chord. Remember I called the chord C major, and then it was F major and G major. Ignore the key. Don't worry about it being the key of C major. You're looking at the chords themselves. C major chord, F major chord, G major chord. So we can take the major 3rd, the one that makes it a major chord, and we could use that. So... Okay, so that that has a different sound again. Okay, again, very dull, I suppose you could call it, but actually, if you were in a band situation and you were to just put a third in every now and then, you'd be amazed at how much effect it can actually have. Because if you even stray a little bit from just playing, you'd be amazed at how much it actually kind of sticks out in the mix. So, you know, again, that's the third. With the fifth, really simple stuff here, but then if you were to mix them up, you know, maybe third on the C, fifth on there. Okay, so I'm using third on the C and then the fifth on the F and the G, so. So, you know, I'm not doing hardly anything here. I'm just using a third and then two fifths. But it's something. We're starting to outline the chord progression. So one thing you can actually do, just as a, you know, for practice yourself, is actually learn the arpeggios, which I'm going to talk about in a sec, and then just start introducing the chord tones one at a time. You don't have to sit there, you know, playing through, you know, and just playing them all over the neck. You don't have to do anything like that. You can just take an individual note, like the fifth, and just start bringing it into play. Get a backing track with the chord progression on it, just start outlining with root notes, and then just start bringing in the fifth. Play around with it rhythmically. You know, just do anything, just mess around. Then start bringing the third into play. Stick with it. Just stick with root and third. You know, and you'll eventually start to know what they sound like. You'll start to know that third, bam, 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 root third, it has a certain sound. That's going to be developing your ear as well. Then the fifth, you got that bam, bam. That, again, has another type of sound. Bam, bam. You've got the fifth below. Roots and fifths are used in pretty much everything. Get used to roots and fifths, figure out what they sound like, play around with them, then add the third, okay? Now, we're only talking about the most basic of chords here. So we're just talking about triads. We're just talking 3-note chords and major chords at that. Then you can move on to 7th chords. You can start adding in other things like 9ths, 11ths, 13ths, but we'll get to that, okay? So that's what chord tones are for, okay? That's how we can use them. Now, you can also work around those chord tones. So once you have that framework in place, once you know what the notes that work are, which is the chord tones, then you can start putting in things around them. And that's where scales come into play and where chromatic notes come into play. You just start working around them. So if we take that C major, for instance, that C major chord, let's say we were going to use the C major scale, and we'll just stick on one chord here. We can take that C major scale. If I was to play through that C major arpeggio again, C, E, and G, okay? Those notes are in that major scale. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and up to C. I'm sure you all know a C major scale, okay? I want to make this as easy to understand as I can. Have a look at that scale again. C, D, E, that's the third. There's that chord tone. Then F, then G, there's the next chord tone. C, E, G. It's the root, the third, and the fifth of the scale. Then we've got the 6th and the 7th, which are A and B, and then up to this C. But those notes, those chord tones, are there in the scale. And you can work around them with the scale. So if you were going to, let's say, use something called a neighbor note, where we can play a chord tone and then the next scale note above and back. it's got a little bit of melody to it. Same with the fifth. We can play the sixth above it. Okay, like I said, very, very straightforward, but I mean, that's a bass line, okay? But we're still working around the chord tones. That's the key, okay? It's the chord tones. They're the framework that we work around, okay? So all the scales in the world, all the chromatic notes, it all works around that chord tone framework. The chord tones are what let us outline the chord progression, and all of the rest of it embellishes it, okay? We're ornamenting around it. So if you hear a lick like this, that's a very common move. Root, fifth, octave, then up to the ninth there. Again, I'm just working around the chord tones. So you get the chord tones first, the arpeggio notes, and then you start adding things around them. It's just the same as if you play a chord. If I was to play, and then, just put little notes around it. It's the same thing. Okay? So that's chord tones and why we use them. So the next thing that I want to talk about is how we make those arpeggios. Because, it's one thing learning those, that major arpeggio there. But, there's a lot of chords out there. And any of you that have worked through chord progressions, you'll see all manner of different chords, like, minor 7 flat 5s, dominant 7 flat 9, sharp 11, 6/9 chords, sus4 chords, blah de blah, okay? Now, it can seem like almost like an unlimited number, like a limitless number of chords, and I suppose, in some ways you could have a limitless number if you got microtonal, but really, in Western music, there's a limit. There's a very defined system that once you've learned it, everything seems pretty straightforward, to be honest. You start looking through chord charts and you think, okay, 7 flat 9, minor 7 flat 5, minor 7 flat 5, flat 9. There's a system, okay? Just a basic system of chord construction. And you don't, like I say, you don't have to learn them as chords on bass. You've only got 4 strings anyway. There's only so many. I mean, you can start making 4-note chords, but you might have 6 or 7-note chords that you see on a chord chart. And really, studying harmony, that's how you learn what the notes are in those chords. Now, in a bass line, you're probably not going to be using all the notes of a chord all the time, but it at least will give you the knowledge so that you're not freaking out when you see, you see some of these crazy chords. And some of those things that look like crazy chords are actually pretty normal, when you hear them. So I'll just give you a starter, regarding this kind of system, this chord construction principles. So you've got triads, okay, which are 3-note chords. You've got 7th chords, which are 4-note chords. Let's have a look at triads first of all. Now, how are triads created? Well, they're built from stacking thirds. Okay, now that I've just said there, stacking thirds, is probably the most important thing that you can learn in terms of getting all this stuff into your head, okay? Now, this obviously, requires you to know what thirds are. So let's have a very quick look at 2 different types of thirds, major third and a minor third. Remember when I played that major scale? And I worked up 3 notes, C, D, E. Well, that's a third, okay? It's a third as a scale degree, but as an interval, that's actually a major third, okay? C to E. 3rd fret A string, 2nd fret on the D string, if you've got a bass in your hand. Okay, and that's what it sounds like. Bum, bum. That's a major third. Now, if I take that third, and I take that top note, and I drop it down a half step, so a fret, that's a minor third. So we've got a major third and a minor third. Learning intervals, these are intervals when you hear about major thirds, perfect fourths, perfect fifths, they're the building blocks of music. Everything from chords to melodies to solos to whatever is built from intervals. So learning intervals is, again, one of the best things that you can do in terms of, things to study on bass. It's not much to it, it doesn't take long. But once you've learned what intervals are, it makes everything else so much easier. I mean, just think about what I said before. It's stacking thirds. Creating these chords is stacking thirds. If you don't know anything about intervals, that's a hole in your knowledge. So learning intervals first, I would say, is a really good foundation for then going into chord construction and everything else beyond that, okay? So, major third, minor third. Have a listen to the difference there. So if I was to play those together as a harmonic interval, so that's the major third and there's the minor third. So that's got a much... That major third there has got a much sweeter sound. Minor third, that's the sad sound. So you just get used to the sound of these things. You get used to the sound of them as harmonic intervals, as in two notes played together, and as melodic intervals. Just have a listen to how that sounds. Happy? Kinda happy anyway. Sad. Or light and dark. Okay, so that's the 2/3 intervals we're looking at. Now you can play those in different ways as well. So there I played 3rd fret for the C on the A string, and then the 2nd fret for the major third, the E, and then the 1st fret for the minor third. So they're both on the D string there. But you can take those top notes and actually bring them down onto the A string. So we get C to E there, 7th fret of the A string, and then C to E flat, which is 6th fret of the A string. So you can play them there, or for any interval, there's pretty much 2 ways you can play it from any one root note. And that can help with unlocking the fretboard as well, but we'll come back to that. So that's the two intervals that we really need to know at this point for creating these chords. And you can just play around with those to begin with. Take a major third. Just run it up and down the bass. Just get used to it, that feeling of those 2 fingers there. You can play it as a little chord if you want. Make up little bass lines with it. Just start. Do whatever you want with it. Minor third. Got a little bit of flea there. Play around with those 2 intervals. Once you have those down, then you can start looking at how these chords are built. So, a major triad, the chord that we looked at, okay, is at a major third and a minor third. We're stacking thirds. We're putting one on top of the other. So, look at the C there, 3rd fret of the A string. If I work up a major third, I'm on the E, okay? Then take the E and work up a minor third, which we'll do on the same string. We get to a G. So it's a major third and a minor third. And that gives us the major triad. It's 2/3, major third, minor third. So the whole arpeggio there, 3rd fret A string, 2nd and 5th frets on the D string. You can see those 2 once you've learned the intervals, you can see them. Major third, minor third. And if you wanted to play the open G, again, you can see that minor third there. If I play the chord up here, so that's 15th fret on the A string, 14th fret on the D string, and 12th fret on the G string. So that's the major triad there. You can see it. There's the major third, there's the minor third. That's all it is. It's stacking thirds. I have to say, when I learned this at music college, all this thing about stacking thirds, something that's actually called tertian harmony, it was a total light bulb moment because it made all of the chord stuff make perfect sense. Once you learn what the formula is for each of those chords and the kind of groups of chords, well, it's a matter of a day learning the whole thing, and then it's like, oh, that's chords done. As soon as you learn this. So there's the major arpeggio. The minor arpeggio, the minor triad, there's the sad sound. That is a minor third and a major third. So it's just the other way around. So if we take the C, 3rd fret of the A string again, and this time let's play the minor third on the same string. So we'll play the E flat there at the 6th fret of the A string. Okay, okay? That's the minor third. Then we take the E flat, and we go up a major third. There's that major third pattern. That's our minor arpeggio. Many of you will know the major and minor arpeggios, I'm sure. But you might not realise that it's those 2/3 in there. I mean, you kind of might have seen it at some point and thought, oh, you know, I can see those 2 patterns in there. But it's actually that they're created from that. Okay, so that's 3rd fret and 6th fret A string, 5th fret on the D string. That's the minor arpeggio. So we now have 2 triads. Remember, triads are 3-note chords. C major, C minor. You can add the octave as well. So you can stick that C at the 5th fret there just for a little bit of an extension. And obviously you can play these chord tones all over the fretboard. So you don't have to just stick to there. You could, you know, all the way up here. Up here. Play them all over the place, okay? So that's the major and minor triads, the arpeggios, but there's 2 other triads available to us. Think about what we've done there. We had the major the major third and the minor third. Then we had the minor third and the major third. But there's 2 other options. We can have major third and major third, or minor third and minor third. So we're using the same ones. So let's try that. So C, 3rd fret of the A string again. Let's take the E, we'll do the 2 major thirds. So E, the major third. Let's look at a major third from the E. That gives us a G sharp, 1st fret of the G string. That's 2 major thirds. Major thirds usually sound quite happy, but obviously this one just sounds a bit perverse. A bit sci-fi. That's an augmented triad. So 2 major thirds, augmented. Okay? It's called augmented because it's an augmented 5th in there. Again, this is where learning your intervals come in. If you don't know what an augmented 5th is, that won't make any sense. But if you did know your intervals, it'd make perfect sense. So that's why I say getting the intervals down, really learning those is really good. You'll have a really good foundation for all of this weird terminology that I keep coming out with. So that's the augmented arpeggio. Now let's try the other one. Let's try 2 minor thirds. So C, 3rd fret of the A string. Let's play the minor third again up to the E flat, 6th fret of the A string. There's the minor third. Now we'll take a minor third from the E flat. So 6th fret there on the A string. Let's work across. We get the G flat, 4th fret of the D string. Okay, so minor third, minor third. Simple. That is a diminished arpeggio, diminished triad. Okay? It's called a diminished triad because that there is a diminished 5th. Okay? Again, if you know your intervals, that'll make sense. So we've now got 4 triads. Major, minor, augmented, and diminished. Now, you're probably thinking, why do I need to know augmented and diminished arpeggios? And to be fair, you probably don't for a lot of songs. You know, they do. You do get them in a lot of songs, but you see major and minor a hell of a lot more. But this isn't about the application, really. This is more about learning the system, learning the framework. There's going to be a lot of chords that you learn when you're learning this kind of system that you will never see again. But that's not the point. You're just learning the principles of the chord construction. And once you've learned all of that, there's not much to it. You can make any chord or see any chord on a chord chart and decipher it. You'll have learned the language of chords, okay? So that's augmented, that's diminished, major, minor, okay? Now, I won't keep going on forever with these with this chord construction because it can get a bit out of hand. But let's just have a look at some 7th chords. Okay, so I'm sure many of you have heard of major 7s and minor 7s and dominant 7s and maybe even a minor 7 flat 5. So how are they created? Well, let's take the major triad. C, E, and G. Remember what that was? It was the major third and then the minor third. So now we're on the G, okay? the 5th fret of that D string. Let's put another third on top. Let's put a major third on top of it. So G, upper major third is B. So we've got major third, minor third, major third. Again, we just stacked another third. Just so happens this time it's a major third. That is a major 7 chord. It's major 7 because it's a major triad, and that interval, now we've put that third on top, that's a major 7th interval. Again, you need to learn your intervals. So, okay, so even though we've added a third on top, that note that we've added relative to the root note is a 7th. That's a C major 7. It's got that bittersweet kind of sound. So when you get up to the top, okay, so that's a major 7. Then if we were to take that major triad again, and instead of the major third, adding that major third on the top from the G, let's add a minor third, we get a B flat, 3rd fret of the G string, okay, which relative to the root note is that minor 7th interval. Now it's not a minor 7 chord, that chord is a C7, it's a dominant 7 chord. So from that major triad at the core, we've now got a major 7 arpeggio and a dominant 7. And you'll know that sound of that chord, it's that bluesy dominant 7. Okay, so blues is all about dominant 7 chords, okay? And you'll get those little dominant 7. Now let's take the minor triad. We've reached up to the 5th there, that 5th fret of the D string. Let's add, first of all, let's add a minor third. Okay, it's a minor triad, let's add a minor third on the top. G up to the B flat, that's our minor third. That gives us a minor 7th from the root note. That's a minor 7 chord. C, E flat, G, B flat. We've just added that note on top of the minor triad. And we could do the same thing from the G there, playing the major third on the top. G, upper major third is B, which gives us a major 7 on the top from the root note. That's a a minor major 7 chord, which is a weird chord. Sounds like this. It's got that kind of spooky kind of sound. You won't see that often, to be fair. But like I said, it doesn't matter. We're just learning the principles here. Now you can do exactly the same thing with the augmented and the diminished and come up with some more 7th chords. But like I say, I'm not going to just keep going with this because we'd be here forever. One that I would that is probably worth mentioning is the minor 7 flat 5. Now that is a diminished triad. If you take the diminished triad there, that's C, E flat and G flat, we then take that, we've got that flat 5 there, we make a major third on the top, giving us the minor 7 from the root, minor 7 flat 5, okay? So, that's just a few 7th chords there. Now, you can go down the road with this, learning all of those chord construction principles, practicing these arpeggios, and it might seem from what I've done there that it's just going to keep going on and on and on, but it doesn't. There's not that much more to it. Now, you got your triads, you got your 7th chords, of which there's pretty much 8 of them. There are a few others that you can create, but let's say there's 8, so there's like 4 triads, 8 7th chords. You can also have extensions to those, so you can go beyond, you can keep stacking thirds. So if we take that major triad again, we work up a third, we could then keep working up another third, up a third, up a third, major and minor thirds there. When we do that, we have the 7th, we work up to the 9th, the 11th, and the 13th, and that's how we bring in extensions. You can have altered extensions, so you can change those to flat 9s, sharp 11s, flat 13s. You can have added note chords, which is like a C6, 6-9 chords, add 9 chords. This is an add 9. Okay. Every breath you take, that's all add 9 chords. So you've got added note chords, and then suspensions, and that's pretty much it. You know, you've got sus4 chord, maybe a sus2, but there's not that much to it. And once you've learned those, that's it. And to be fair, a lot of the chords that you're going to see in general chord charts are going to be the things that I've already covered here today. But it's all about learning that tertian harmony thing and learning about that stacking of thirds. Once you learn that and you can see those thirds stacked in there and then how things work around that, everything starts to take on a different tinge. You start to see things differently. And, you know, it's not just this infinite number of chords, like, oh, it's created this weird chord. No, most of the chords are just using these, well, pretty much all the chords are using these basic principles. They're always built from like a triad, one of the triads, or one of the 7th chords with some added notes in there. So that's the basics of arpeggios. And like I've said, Chord Tone Essentials, the Chord Tone Essentials course over at Talking Bass is the deep dive into all of this. I cover every single chord, okay? Work through them all in a systemized way. That's on sale at the moment for 30 with a 30% discount. So there's a link in the description below. So if you really want to learn about every single chord there is, check that out. Now, beyond that, once you've learned the basics of these arpeggios, okay? Because bear in mind, once you've learned those, that's more notes that you can start using when you're playing through chord progressions. For instance, if I'm playing around on a major 7, you know, you can just make up riffs around them. Just simple things. If I was going to use the dominant 7, really simple stuff there, just outlining the chord, the arpeggio. But when you're in a band setting, you know, and you're wanting to create some melodic material, you know, like a melodic bass line from a chord chart someone's given you, these are the notes that you can use. If you know the arpeggios, you can just start playing around with them. So it's just giving you lots of material. Then once you've learned how you can use scales around the arpeggios, then you can really start going to town with this. And like I said, this is what you'll use for playing solos as well. You know, so if you're in that upper area, you know, there's a phrase. I'm just using that major 7 there. You can just make phrases from these arpeggios, and that's over a C major 7. You can hear that chord being implied. If it was the D minor 7, for instance. Okay, again, you can hear that chord, G7. Okay, so once you've learned the arpeggios, you can start applying them. Now, the next step is to start moving outside of those little boxes. You know, you've learned it there as just a basic shape working from that C there. But really, you need to start seeing them over the entire fretboard, because like I said, those chord tones are everywhere. So that even that basic C major 7 there, you can go below. They're all over the place. I'm in this middle area. I'm up in the higher area. You know, we're right up there at the 24th fret. And then, you know, all the way down here. So those notes there, that C, E, G, and B, you can play them anywhere. Now, the key to being able to kind of unlock the fretboard and move around is to actually learn multiple positions for them. So let's say that you're playing here in this low area. You've got, there's that C major 7. If you were to look at where the next C is, as you move up, I mean, you've got one there, that octave, but let's say one that you can build up from. It's going to be on the E string. Okay, so you've got C here, 3rd fret of the A string, and then I've got C here at the 8th fret of the E string. I'm sticking to C here just so that, you know, we're not getting confused by then going A flat and then F sharp or whatever. C, C, and then we've got another C here at the octave. So we've now got one at the 15th fret, and then we've got another one up here at the 20th fret of the E string. So that's 4 different places where we've got the root note. So you could take that arpeggio that we've just learned, play it there. You could move it up here, play it up here, or play it up here. Okay, so I mean that's a start, but beyond that, you actually want to learn each of these arpeggios starting on a different finger. So I'll show you what I mean just with this major 7, okay? So if we take the C at the 8th fret of the E string there. So 8th fret E string, 7th and 10th frets on the A string, and then the B there, 9th fret of the D string. Well, we can also play it from, well, we'll do it from the 1st finger first. So we can start on the 1st finger. So we're not going to be playing anything below that 8th fret. So remember what I said about those intervals earlier? The C to the E. We could play it here, but we could also play it on the same string. Well, you can do the same thing here. Got the C. Instead of playing the E at the 7th fret of the A string, we can play it at the 12th fret of the E string. Then we can play the G there at the 10th fret of the A string, and then the B there at the 9th fret again of the D string, which gives us a different pattern. Okay, so we start on the 2nd finger, start on the 1st finger. We could also start on the 4th finger. So there, 8th fret E string, 7th fret on 7th fret, yeah, 7th fret on the A string, 5th fret on the D string, then the 9th fret on the D string. Again, a different pattern. So why would you want to learn all of these different patterns? Well, it depends where your hand is. If your hand plump lands there, we can use that 2nd finger. But if our hand is more in this area, the notes are there under the fingers with that 1st finger on the 8th fret. And then if the hand was here with the 1st finger over that 5th fret, you know, if you'd not learned these patterns, you might be thinking, oh, I need to play a major 7 arpeggio. Where do I play it? And you're going to kind of feel pressured into moving into the position that you know already, when in fact, you can just use the 4th finger arpeggio. Add that to the ones at the 3rd fret. 4th finger again. 1st finger. Then up here. We can then move up to this C. Oops. And then up here. 4th finger. Oops. 1st finger. Okay, so we've increased the real estate a little bit. So we've just added a few more notes in there, or a few frets in there. Same notes, different frets. Then, beyond that, you can start to extend those patterns in position. So if I'm at that 8th fret again, work up through the arpeggio, add the B below at the 7th fret of the E string. Then we can add the C there at the 10th fret of the D string, and keep going. There's the E that we had down here at the 9th fret up here at the 9th fret of the G string. Okay, so we've added all of the notes in that position for the C major 7. And you can, from there, work up again, you know, get up to the G there, 12th fret. Same with this 1st finger. 4th finger, you can take that B again, work all the way up to the C on the G string, and on the E there as well. Same in this position, same in this position. So you just start extending it. I kind of describe this as being a bit like a map. So imagine that you've been dumped on a desert island somewhere, you know, like on Lost or something like that. And when you first land there, all you've got is the beach, okay? You don't know where anything is. You can hear some tribe somewhere. You can see some smoke over there, and you're like, I better not go over there. But you know where you are with this beach. Nobody's come to the beach yet, so we feel a bit safe. We're on the beach. But then, gradually, over time, you start, going a little bit further, making a map. And a bit further over there, a bit further over there. You find a little lake over there. Maybe some coconuts over there. Something else over there. Well, you just start adding to your map. And gradually over time, you map out the whole island, okay? Same thing with the fretboard. You start in one area and you know it, okay? So if it's with that major 7, you learn the arpeggio. But that's it. And you're scared to go any further with it. But then gradually you think, oh, I can move up here. And oh, I've got this one over here. Great. I found the coconuts. You start branching out a little bit more, then you're all the way up here, up to the volcano. Okay, so you just start mapping out the fretboard, but you do it a little bit at a time. If you try doing the whole thing, obviously, it's just not going to sink in. You're not going to get it. But if you just start, adding a note here, adding a note there, before you know it, you're going to know the whole fretboard, okay? So that gives us a few things. So there was the idea of chord tones and how you can use them to create bass lines. You can use them for fills, you can use them for solos. You're outlining the chord progression. It's the most important thing that you can study as a bass player. Below that is the intervals. You really want to study intervals, but that's the foundation. Then you learn the arpeggios, you learn what the language of chords. You learn what the chords are, and then you can start to study how those chords interact, how you create progressions with them. But, you got to learn the ABCs first. You got to learn what a major chord is, what a minor chord is, what a major 7 chord is. Otherwise, the chord progressions themselves, you're looking at a foreign language that you don't understand. So you learn what those arpeggios are, and then you can start branching out with them and start unlocking the fretboard, making that map, okay? And then before you know it, you're going to have a little bit more fluency around. You can start playing over backing tracks. You can start playing with people in bands. You can start, just messing around and creating vocabulary, transcribing things that other people have done, transcribing bass lines or learning bass lines. Seeing those arpeggios in there, seeing how scales work around arpeggios. It's all based on a foundation. You develop that foundation, just gradually build up, okay? So that's enough for chord tones today. So remember, the Chord Tone Essentials course is me basically talking about all this stuff, but deep dive, okay? Every single chord and all of them mapped, and then how to apply them. So that's over at TalkingBass. That's 30% off until Sunday night. So that's it for the theory stuff. So now I can take some questions after all that. Hopefully you're all still hanging around after I've just been waffling. So I'll hang around. What time are we at now? So that was about an hour. So I'll hang around for about another 10 minutes. And so if you've got any questions about any of that or anything in general, just shoot a question in here now. I'll have a look up through the questions that we've had so far. There's quite a few of them. So that one, Joey Dolan and bass. Easier to understand when we call the fifth, though stacking thirds is a neat concept. Well, I'll just put that up on screen because that's an important point, okay? So the way that people normally learn those chord tones is root, third, and fifth. Now that's fine. That's how I originally learned them. But in terms of the tertian harmony side of things, in terms of knowing how these things are created, learning the framework, okay, that's where learning the thirds comes in, the stacking of thirds. Now, once you've learned that they are stacked thirds, then you kind of cast that aside. Then it's a case of root, third, fifth, major seventh. In fact, it's not really that at all. It's actually root up to the major third, to the perfect fifth, and up to the major seventh as measured from the root note. That's actually what that is. That's how you then see them, okay? But in terms of building them, it's the stacking of thirds. But what that stacking of thirds does is it kind of gives you a framework for actually learning all the other chords. You know, the 7th chords, the 9th chords, 11th chords, 13th chords, knowing that, well, actually, if I look up through the extensions, major 13 chord. You can see there that I'm just running up through thirds. Upper major third, minor third, upper major third, upper minor third, upper minor third, and upper major third. Now, in terms of the intervals, they're from the root note. It's root, major third, perfect 5th, major 7, major 9, perfect 11th, and major 13th, okay? That's how I will then see it after that. But it was created with the thirds. So that's the key here. Like I say, once you've learned, you know, the chord construction principles in terms of the intervals, then you can forget about the thirds thing. But there's no getting around it, the fact that you're actually stacking them in this way. And it actually makes more sense when you start looking at other types of harmony, like quartal harmony, for instance. So if any of you are into quartal harmony in jazz, you'll get these. That's chords built from fourths. They don't have to be built from thirds. You can actually use fourths. You can use fifths. That's quintal harmony. You know, you could. There's lots of different ways that you can do this, but tertian harmony, being built from thirds, that's where that comes in. Okay, so you are correct in terms of thinking about them, you know, after the fact. So, oh, and there's Joey again. So we studied 1-3-5, 1 flat 3-5, 1-3-5 7 flat 7, etc. Yeah, that's the shorthand that you use for intervals. So 1 being root, 3 being major third, flat 3 being minor third. You know, you learn what those are. Flat 7, double flat 7 for a diminished 7th. It's just, you know, kind of shorthand, numerical shorthand for learning the intervals. But, you know, that's why I say learning the theory behind the intervals. A lot of it starts to make more sense then, because, you know, I, like everybody else, would have been seeing things as 1-3-5 and, you know, because it's very quick and easy, but actually when you learn the more in-depth theory, which is actually just classical harmony, once you start actually learning more about that, you kind of help with the holes in the knowledge, okay? Because it's very easy to start learning a bit from here and a bit from there and a bit from here and a bit from there, and then kind of have little holes here and there. But it was only when I started actually studying this stuff at college, you know, because I had to do all the music theory grades and all that kind of stuff, which is all very, very classical. So you study classical harmony, and then you go on to study jazz harmony. And when you do, especially classical harmony, if you ever study here in the UK, it's ABRSM theory grades. You have to work through these books, and then you have your exams and stuff. That stuff, the real hardcore classical stuff, is really, really good. It gives you such a good foundation, because that's actually where all of this stuff originally comes from, you know, working through from the Baroque period through to today. So, yeah, learning the actual terminology, the, you know, major third, perfect fifth, it's exactly the same thing as 1-3-5, you know, flat 7, but it's good to know where that comes from, and it makes learning all of the rest of the terminology make more sense, you know. So that's just a word on those, but you need to know that as well, you know, 1-3-5, because most of the time in terms of the I'll actually write these things out in books that way, 1-3-5, 1-3-5 7, you know, I'll be using intervallic construction like that. It's basically good to learn everything. Oh, sound is low for you. Let's see what else we got here. Any opinions on biamping for clean and dirty cabinets? That's a big that's a big topic to cover at the moment. One thing you can do is I did a video on it's not necessarily what you're talking about, but I don't know if you've seen the lesson I did on Royal Blood, where I split the signal and I used three. Did I use three? No, I just used two. I think it was biamped. So I split the signal, used POG, octave, and created the Royal Blood sound with it. Check out Talking Bass Royal Blood if you want to see, because I really go into depth with it then. Here's a question. Hi Mark, I'm playing in a country band, older classic country. Any tips where I can spice up my bass lines to give more of a bounce and flavour? Now that sounds more like you're talking about rhythm, but I'm guessing you're actually talking notes. Now, the key for you is to actually look at the chord chart, okay? So I'm guessing that if you're playing in a country band, you're probably going to be given chords, okay? Or you might have learned them by ear, okay? But if you know the chord progression and you know the arpeggios, like I said earlier, you can just start by just using root and fifth, root and third. Just bringing the root, third, and fifth into play. I mean, I'm playing incredibly simply there, just to outline the point. But just start bringing those other chord tones into play, and like I said, then you can start to just bring a note in above and below, like a scale note. So you figure out what key you're in, and then I've got that note above there, got the note below, and although to be fair, on a country tune, that's probably going to be a little bit too much. You actually just want to stick with the chord tones to begin with, and just just play around rhythmically. Just get into the, listen to the drummer and just start to work around. You want to be hitting them one, but then depending on what the feel is, if it's a 16th note or an 8th note groove, you want to start thinking a little bit more rhythmically, maybe try and put things on off beats to add a little bit more tension, and then you can resolve back on the beat. But again, just start using major and minor arpeggios, major and minor triads. Okay, and just start playing around with them. Mark's here from Texas. He's an old timer on with Talking Bass. He's been around for ages. Okay, let's go down a few of these. Andrea's here. Yep, so you like all that about stacking thirds. Yeah, it's funny how it actually makes a lot of sense. When you see it, it's for me, it was a big light bulb moment, because it just meant, because especially when I was at music college, because you're having to deal with a lot of weird chords that they're throwing at you, and it's all jazz that you're doing. So, when you're seeing flat 9s, sharp 11s, all that stuff, you really need to have a foundation. You need to know the core units, the standard triads, the 7th chords, your basic major 7, minor 7, dominant 7, minor 7, flat 5, let's say. And then all of those extensions are built on top of that, but you've got the core triads. You can bring any chord. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be a 7 flat 9 sharp 9 flat 13 sharp 11. You could take a chord like that with a big long name, and you can just drop it down to a dominant 7. Once you know the principles, it makes simplifying the chords a lot easier. And for bass, you really want to be simplifying the chords. So when you see a major 9 chord, you want to be thinking in your head, it's a major 7. There's a little 9th on it, but it's a major 7. When you see a minor 7 flat 5 flat 9, you have to be able to think, that's a minor 7 flat 5. Okay? But it's just extended a little bit with a little bit of spice, a little bit of flavor with the flat 9. Okay? And then over time, you start to understand how those altered extensions sound. Okay, so I'll finish in a sec. So if you've just got any last-minute questions before I go, I am here. So, and like I said, check out Talking Bass as well. Go check out the website. I've done a total redesign on it. It's the front page even is very, very different now. But you can, when you log in, the resources page. So if you've not got a TalkingBass membership, make sure you sign up as well, because there's a lot of stuff in the members area there. It's totally free, by the way, to just get a free membership there. You go in the resources area, you'll now see that it's all totally changed. So like the 25 bass riff challenge, 25 slap groove challenge, those, like I say, it's all free to go in there and try those out. You'll now see that that's all lovely. It looks very, very different. There's a drum beats thing in there. You can, jam to the drum beats in there. There's a scale and arpeggio encyclopedia, so you can work through all these the common scales and arpeggios. And there's a lot of free ebooks in there. So go check that out. It's all nicely, decorated now. So that's different. And like I say, Chord Tone Essentials, 30% off until Sunday, where I waffle on about all of this stuff that I've just been talking about. Okay, so if we don't have any more questions, do we need to know the fretboard first? Let me put that up on screen. Kind of. Now, learning all of this stuff is going to help with learning the fretboard, especially when you start learning how to play walking bass lines. Walking bass lines are great for learning the fretboard because you're always having to look at the next chord, so it's kind of testing you all the time. So if you've got a chord progression, like basic progression, C major 7, A minor 7, D minor 7, good old I got rhythm turnaround. If you're reading that on a chord chart, it's like you've got this constant test. You got C, A, D, G, and if you're up in this area, C, A, D, G, C, A, D, G, C, A, D, G, C, just going around on that. It's like somebody holding up cards, C, find me a C. Oh, there's a C. A, give me an A. And you're like, A, give me a D. Oh, there's a D. Where's a G? So it's like constantly testing you. So that walking bass lines are great for that. Now, just as a quick fretboard learning exercise, there is an exercise that I can give you that might help with this and probably change how you see the fretboard, and it's very quick. So I'll just go through it as the last bit, okay? So when you say learning the fretboard, what you're meaning is learning the notes on the fretboard, because, if you've got a chord chart, you're going to have to know where those notes are, even just to play the root notes, aren't you? Now, you can learn in positions. That's kind of the traditional way to do it, and if you were learning to read, you would do that in positions gradually over time. But there is a very quick exercise. Some of you have probably seen this. I have done it on lessons in the past, where you basically take the cycle of fourths, and then you just try and find those notes on each string. So, first thing you need to do is learn the cycle of fourths. I've got a really quick way of learning the cycle of fourths. So, listen up, people. I'm about to teach you the cycle of fourths in about, 30 seconds to a minute, okay? So, the cycle of fourths, just in case you didn't know, it's just a sequence of notes. If you were to take the circle of fifths, you've probably seen that diagram. Well, it's kind of the counterclockwise version of that. If you were to take a C and then you were to go up a perfect fifth, those intervals again, you'd find an F. Another perfect fifth, you're up to a B flat. Another perfect fifth, you're up to an E flat, and so on. Now, the standard way that you learn the cycle of fourths is just reciting it as C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, B, E, A, D, G, and then you're back to C. Okay, so it's like a long-winded way of getting from C to C, going through every chromatic note. Okay, now when I just recited that, you probably thought, man, that's like learning times tables. Well, here's the solution. So think of the word cycle of fourths. Okay, C, F. Okay, that's your start. Okay, C, F, and then all I want you to do is think of the word bead. Okay, like a bead of sweat. How do you spell that? B-E-A-D, okay? And then all I want you to do is put a G on the end, okay? I know that sounds weird, but bead, G, okay? Bead of sweat, G. First time flats, second time natural notes. That's it. C, F, cycle of fourths, bead, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat. Okay, all flats first time. So C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, and then bead, G again. Natural. B, E, A, D, G. C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, B, E, A, D, G, back to C. That's the cycle of fourths, okay? So now whenever, if I now recite it unaccented like I did before, C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, B, E, A, D, G, it doesn't sound like a big random string of notes anymore, does it? C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, B, E, A, D, G, back to C. Cycle of fourths. Right, once you've got that, all you're going to do is find those notes on the fretboard. So, we're going to do it on the E string. Totally isolate that E string. And this is a really good thing going forward in terms of practice. If you really want to get good at something on bass, you want to isolate it. You want to focus on a particular thing in isolation, okay? So, let's go through those notes. C, okay? We're starting there. Find a C on the E string. I mean, that, for some of you, even that is going to be hard. So, where is there a C? Well, it's at the 8th fret there. Okay? So if you found that difficult, remember that that's there. Start again. C. There it is. Look at that 8th fret. It's 3 fret markers and it's the one after that 3rd fret marker. Well, 4 if you've got one on the 1st fret, but, there it is. That's your first note. C. F. Where's there an F on the E string? Oh, there it is. 1st fret. Okay, now if you had a problem finding it, start again. C, F. And then B flat. Where's there a B flat? Well, it's there. It's at the 6th fret of the E string. So, if you had a problem finding it, start again. C. So you say the note, find it. F. Oh, yes, you know where the F is now. B flat. Oh, there it is. Okay? Just those 3. C, F, B flat. Okay? E flat. Where's there an E flat? Oh, it's the E string. We can't go down. It's here at the 11th fret. Okay? Remember, the 12th fret is a repeat of the open strings. If any of you are beginners and you didn't know that, well, there's a fact. So the 12th fret there with the 2 fret markers, that's a repeat of the open strings. E, A, D, G. So E flat, 11th fret of the E string. If you found it hard to find it, start again. C. Oh, we know now that it's the 8th fret. F. Oh, we know that it's on the 1st fret. B flat. Ah, we know the B flat. E flat, where is it? Oh, it's up here. Start again. C, F, B flat, E flat. Where's A flat? Oh, where's A flat? There it is, 4th fret of the E string. Start again. Rinse and repeat, round and round. C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, then B, E, A, D, G, and back to C. Okay? That's the whole thing. So you want to be able to just work through it like that. But like I said, if you have a problem, you finding the next one. Don't just keep going through it. Don't just think, oh, now I need to find B flat. Now I need to find A flat. Now I need to find D flat. Now I need to find G flat. Don't do that. Start again. And then just really work on the ones that you've got. And then just add them one at a time. Don't try just memorizing all of those frets all in one go. It's not going to work. It's way quicker to just keep going over and over them. Say them out loud as you do it, or say them in your head. Don't just learn a fretboard pattern, because you're not learning anything then. So C, F, B flat, E flat, then find out where the A flat is, start again. Round and round and round. And each time, be looking for the note. Like I say, if you start feeling like you're memorizing fretboard patterns, oh, I come down and then I go up, and then I come down and then I go up. Try avoiding that at all costs. It's a case of seeing that particular fret there. Little mental picture of that there. That is a C, okay? That 8th fret there, it's a C. You know, the F, the B flat. Then, once you've got the E string down, A string. C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, B, E, A, D, G, C. D string, C, F, B flat, you know, carry on. Up on the G string, C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, etc. You just work on each string in turn. And eventually, if you can do that, you will know it. And especially the fact that you're saying it out loud as you do it. Because you're making that association. It's a little bit like going 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 2 is 6. You're actually associating the letter, that C, with that little picture of that fret. Okay? So that is a really... is this live? Yes, it is. Are we Devo? So, are we... No, it's not that, is it? Are we men? The C... F, B flat, A, C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, B, A, D, G thing. That's the bit you need to get down first. But like I said, that's a quick fix. You can learn that really quickly. Then you just go through each string in turn. Then bear in mind what I said about the 12th fret being a repeat. Once you've learned those, well, you've already learned those, because if you know that there is a C at the 10th fret of the D string, well, there at the, whatever that is, 24, 23, 22nd fret, I don't know the frets when you get up here, I just know the notes, but that's a C, okay? If you're learning that, that's a G flat there. Well, actually, let's go on to a 20 fret so that that it applies to you. Let's take that there or there. E flat there at the 6th fret of the A string. We go up here. It's at the the 18th fret of the A string. It's the same thing. Just look at the fret markers and see the fret markers repeat. Now, I know that a lot of you will know that already, but if you're a beginner, you might not know that. You might not realize that the open strings are the same as the 12th fret, and then that fret marker is the same as that one's the same as that one, etc. So you only need to learn the notes down here, and you've learned them up here. So, so that's learning the fretboard. So once you've done that, then you can start adding all those chord tones into play. So hopefully that's helped. Okay, last few here. Yep, this is live. Okay, so I'll get going. That's been pretty cool. I love doing these lives. Hopefully you've all learned a little bit about chord tones. If any of you arrived late, you can just go back. As soon as I've stopped this, it'll be... it'll stay there on YouTube, so you can just go back over it all. But like I said, if you're interested in any of that theory stuff that I was talking about, I say it's theory, it's just, just chords, isn't it? So if you're interested in any of that, Chord Tone Essentials is over at Talking Bass, 30% discount until Sunday. And that's just a massive deep dive into it all. So you learn every single chord in there. Just in the first module, I go through every single chord that you're ever going to see, ever. Second module maps out the fingerboard using all those positions I was talking about. And then in the third module, you start having it applied to bass lines. You add neighbor notes and passing notes into play, auxiliary notes, approach notes, applying it to fills, applying it to walking bass lines. So it's a big course. So that's over at Talking Bass. It's $91 at the moment for while it's on sale. The light bulb behind you symbolizes the light bulb which went off for so many of us. Outstanding. Thanks. Yes, I did think that the other day when I was doing one of my thumbnails and I saw the old... light bulb there, and I thought, there we go, it's a light bulb moment. Believe it or not, I was actually going to try and put a light bulb graphic on the screen, because I think the title I was going to have was something along, it was going to have light bulb in the title, and I thought, I'll get a graphic for a light bulb and stick it next to me, and then what do you know, I look to the side and there's a light bulb. So cool. How many we got in? We've got 100 people in. That's pretty good. These lives that I do, you're lucky if you get like 30 sometimes. But it's great to see you all. And like I said, check out Talking Bass. Check out all of the website now. And if you've not seen the video that I did last week, which is going good guns, it's actually up to about 50,000 views now. That was all about walking bass. So all that stuff that I've just been talking about, I applied some of it to walking bass lines. And just in case you're new to Talking Bass in terms of the actual channel, it's probably worth mentioning that there's about 900 lessons on the channel now. 30 is, actually it's this month, it's 14 years old this month. Or is it? No, 13 years. It's 13 years old this month. So it's the same age as my eldest daughter, because that's when I started it. So 13 years of weekly lessons. So there's a ton of them there. So if you want to learn anything, you know, be it, you know, Les Claypool bass lines, arpeggios, walking bass, you know, pick playing, slap, whatever it is. There's usually a lesson on that stuff already. So make sure you use the search bar in there. There's a lot of playlists there on the YouTube channel as well. But usually, if there's anything that you're trying to find, just put Talking Bass and then whatever it is. Slayer bass lines, Cannibal Corpse bass lines, Level 42 bass lines. You know, it's all on there. Oh, by the way, any of you that like Danny Sapko, me and him are from the same area. So we were talking to each other the other day about this. I'm going to do an interview with him, but I've been so busy over the past few weeks. So we were due to do it last week, but I never got a chance to do it. So Danny's going to be on the channel. So if you like Danny Sapko, he's going to be coming on the channel. I've known him quite a long time, actually. He used to go to the London bass shows and all the, you know, the trade shows and stuff. So he used to be there 10 years ago. He looked very different then. He didn't have all his leather on. But he's from Bradford and I'm from Wakefield, both up in Yorkshire. I live on the Isle of Wight now, but yeah, we're both from that neck of the woods, which is how I know Scott Devine as well. We're all from Leeds, basically. We're all from West Yorkshire. So it's like me, Scott, Danny Sapko, what else we got there? Jeff Chalmers that runs Discover Double Bass. There's a bunch of us. That are, if any of you know Dan Francis Owen, he's got a channel. He's from up there as well, from Leeds. So yeah, cool. All right then, everybody. I will get moving. And oh yeah, there you go, bass. And yeah, so keep an eye out for next week. I'll be doing another lesson probably next Friday. And I might try and get another live in at some point next week as well. All right, everybody. I shall see you later.